Thanks for watching the Nick Will Talk About Anything podcast. I got the chance to sit down with my great friend Seth Campbell that I've been friends with for around 14 years or so. And he lives outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and he's lived in a lot of different places around this country and even in Costa Rica for a time. We didn't get into the details of that too much, but he's had quite a few interesting life experiences. A lot of things were a little bit stacked against him, we might say, as far as things that people view as necessary for success in life or for success in earning income, having a successful career that you enjoy doing, and having what it takes to raise your family. So he's overcome a lot of adversity that might have been stacked against him from the get-go, but learned how to make the best of it, learned how to chase after things that he enjoyed, and find that balance between achieving and accomplishing and earning versus finding joy and satisfaction with where you're at. So I hope you'll enjoy listening to this and maybe take something positive away from it that you can use in your life. This is the Nick Will Talk About Anything podcast. I hope you'll like and subscribe to it and share this maybe with some friends of yours. It's here on YouTube, and it's also available throughout all podcasting platforms that you might utilize. So sit back and just watch for a little while and enjoy it and share it with someone else. Thanks. Appreciate you guys.
I feel like he could have said, "Hey guys, you're really screwing yourselves over on this. Like at least put some water on top of that,
Sure.
And so I feel like he could have done that, and that would have been helpful.
Right.
But he didn't, and in the end, it'll be okay, and I won't hate it, and I'll just see it every day, every single day of my life that I live here. I'll be like, oh man, I really could have done a better job on that somehow. I don't know how, but I could have.
No, I mean I feel that and I relate to that.
Yeah.
That sentiment in life.
Right?
I could have just done better.
I could have done better. So, hey, let's jump into this thing.
Okay, we're jumping in.
Let's jump in. Let's talk about literally anything. That's what the name of this thing is, right? I'll talk about just about anything. And so I am Nick DeFord. This is the Nick Will Talk About Anything podcast. My guest today for the first episode that I have somebody that's not here in studio, which I honestly thought I would have more of those than in-persons. And then people just kept responding to my invite to be like, yeah, I'll show up to your shed in your backyard. That's, in case you couldn't tell, this is a shed that I'm sitting in, but I just decked it out where it's this isn't bad. Someday I'll do a tour. I'll pan the camera just a little bit, and you can see yeah, this is a tiny, tiny space you're in. But anyway, so this is my friend Seth Campbell coming out of Portland, Tennessee. Yes, it sounds just about as redneck as you might, or it is about as redneck as you might think it sounds. But it's actually a cool little town. They have giant, I guess they're fiberglass strawberries, somewhere in town because they have the Strawberry Festival
This weekend.
Oh, it's coming up this weekend.
It's
right
this
now.
Weekend. Look out, it's here.
Which is interesting because, where I live in Zephyr Hills, just down the road in Plant City, 20 minutes south of here, they have a ton of strawberries. They grow so many strawberries for probably the whole nation. I don't know. And so we have they have a strawberry festival that is probably larger. I don't know. It doesn't matter whose strawberry festival is the largest strawberry festival, but I'm guessing this one's probably a little bigger because they actually grow the strawberries here. I don't know if you guys actually grow strawberries.
It probably doesn't matter, but do they have giant fiberglass strawberries representing the fact that they...
To the best of my knowledge, they don't. To the best of my knowledge, they don't.
Now I've got to know how big the Portland Strawberry Festival is because I've actually looked this up before.
You go ahead and look that up.
Larger than you thought it would be.
Well, I'll tell you what. A couple years ago, I know for a fact that they had, at the prime of her career, Reba McEntire performing as one of the nightly events at the Strawberry Festival here in Plant City. I know this because I did not take my wife there, and she definitely wanted to go, and so I feel a little bit bad about that.
I kind of instantly don't want to dive into this because two things pop up, right? One, it says Portland, Tennessee Strawberry Festival, the 81st annual, and then right underneath it, it says Plant City Strawberry Festival, and there's like a picture and a giant stage. It looks like a concert's about to happen.
Oh, it's a big deal.
Little people in strawberry costumes are going to come out. I don't know.
Have you ever been to a county fair, like in any county USA?
Yes.
It's like that, but maybe a little bit bigger and with strawberries. So that's how I would describe it. I have also, in full disclosure, literally never attended the Strawberry Festival.
You should go.
One time. So my grandparents lived in Zephyr Hills before I had moved here. And, well, they didn't live here. They would come down for the winter as snowbirds. They had a mobile home. You know, they would come down there for years. And we came down for a visit at some point. Like, we drove our car down from Nashville. We used to live up there. We drove our car down, and we're hanging out. And my grandpa's like, hey, the Strawberry Festival's going on. I'm like, what's that? He's like, oh, it's down in Plant City. You go down there. We're like, okay, cool. So we get on our phone. It's like the first year that smartphones are a thing. Like, I think iPhone came out in like, what, 07? So this is like 08. I've got a Samsung where like you like grab it and you fling it like this and like the keyboard slides out.
Yes.
So we were fancy, right? Like this was high-tech stuff. I was on the Sprint network. If you ever want like low speeds and bad connections, but a little better than T-Mobile, Sprint's your partner, you know? And so like it's not Getro PCS, it's Sprint, you know? You're kind of middle of the pack. And
Do you remember the good old days when you had to wait till 7 o'clock to call your friends?
Oh my goodness! Like when you paid per minute.
Well, yeah, it's 7 o'clock, and then the weekends were free though.
Oh yeah, well Sprint was the leader in some free minutes, like to other. It wasn't just like because everybody had their tribe, like AT&T could call AT&T for free, Verizon.
Right.
But Sprint had like a good deal on that, so that's why we went with it. But so I'm looking it up and finding out where the festival grounds is. I did not find out what weekend they were having the Strawberry Festival or what week, and we drove all the way down to Plant City, and it turned out my grandfather was totally wrong. It was like 2 weeks away. He had just seen it on the news, and he's like, oh, it's happening, you know, probably right now.
Yeah,
and so we're like, well, we'll go.
Because
there's literally nothing happening at your mobile home. Like, it's literally you get up and you eat, and then you take a mid-morning nap, and then you eat lunch, and then you take an afternoon nap, and then you kind of eat dinner and maybe walk around the trailer park and just wave at people sitting on their porches. That was
my favorite thing about trailer parks, because I did grow up in some.
You've lived in trailer parks, yeah. Like, don't forget your roots, man.
I haven't. There's always somebody fixing something, but they're never actually fixing anything.
Oh, man.
That is one of my favorite trailer park activities, is just to go around and see who's trying to fix something today.
Now, you're right. You're 100% right. And I've spent a little time in some trailer parks myself. However, in Zephyr Hills, like the trailer parks here are, they have a class that they try to achieve by saying you have to be 55 and older to live here.
Okay.
But the problem is you've met some 55-year-olds who, like, I'll be polite about it, their standards are still kind of low. And so they try to get away with some stuff, and so the parks have rules, but basically they try to eliminate as much of that as they can. But there's still going to be somebody working on like a house or a car or a lawnmower that's just a lost cause, and they're still going to try to work on it anyway.
Well, and not to poop on people who live in trailer parks. In all fairness, I grew up in a trailer park in Macon County, which is not really like the
what
prime
state?
Spots. No, Tennessee, Macon County.
Tennessee, Macon County, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't, in all fairness, I haven't been there in 20 plus years. Maybe the standards
might have
changed.
Improved, yeah.
This was like a 8-mile kind of trailer park we're talking about here. You know,
like M&M 8 Mile kind of thing,
right,
yeah.
Exactly. Like, this wasn't really like the cream of the crop, nice trailers. We were in some busted up single wides.
You're like Trailer Park Boys, Trailer Park. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I told somebody about that the other day. They're like, I don't even know. I'm like, honestly, I haven't watched that show either. But like the few minutes I've seen, it's exactly what you would think it is. You know,
the
like
title kind of says it all.
It pretty much handles it. You know, like whatever you think of when you think of Trailer Park Boys, they nailed it. You know,
that is what it is in this show. Yeah, because I too have not seen the Trailer Park Boys.
Now, I never lived in a trailer park. I did spend some time as a child in a single wide, as my parents were building a house. They were like, hey, you know how we could save some money? We can buy a trailer for like $1,200 and have it towed out to our property. And you know, they just hooked up to some utilities and stuff. And then it was like right on site where they were building the house. And so my dad like physically built the house. I mean, he'd have people come and help him, but he did a ton of it himself, and it took like a couple years, right? So we lived in a trailer for a good little while.
Right.
Had bunk beds. Like my brother, like one time the bunk bed, just the top part fell down on top of me while I was asleep. I didn't even wake up. I was a very sound sleeper. My sister had like a crib and then like a toddler bed, whatever, in the living room, because it was a 2-bed thing. You know, it was just not very large. But we didn't know any better. I mean, that's the cool thing. Like when you're a kid, I mean, maybe when you're a teenager, you start to be like, oh my goodness, we live in a trailer park. But when you're a kid, you don't care. You don't know any better.
No, yeah, I mean, a house is a house. It doesn't really matter. I agree with that. And again, it's not like all trailer parks are that way, but
that's true.
There's definitely a segment of trailer park living that's probably not the best or the most savory.
I grew up going to church, and I had these friends in our youth group, and like a couple of them would live in this one trailer park that we all knew about. You know, it was a little north of Flint, Michigan. And I remember this one kid, John, talking about he was talking about like friends that he like still went to school with, but they used to be his neighbors in the trailer park. He's like, yeah, that, you know, so and so, he used to live here, but he got out, you know, and then so he got out too. And they were talking like they actually got out and like lived in a house or an apartment instead of in a trailer park. And so that was just kind of their mentality, was they're like, hey, you know what, we're surviving, but if you can get out, man, you should get out.
Right. Yeah,
and
it's like an achievement.
Yeah, it was like an achievement level unlocked. You know, and so I think that's something that, I mean, hey, you should learn to live, like be happy with where you live, right? Like whatever it is that you find yourself, like learn to be content with that. I think that's a principle that's, you know, applicable. I was talking with my wife a while back, and I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I was like, okay, here's the deal. You know, men can, like, we can be pretty much content. I mean, for me, like I prefer running water. That's good. I like to like be clean and have a shower and all that stuff. I prefer running water, and if it's got a water heater, that's even better. Right. Other than that, like I need, you know, I do like my air conditioning. I'm not going to lie, especially living in Florida. I can't deal with the heat without that. Other than that, I don't need too much. You know, like I'm fine with camping in a tent. We've got a motorhome, and I enjoy staying in that with my family. But I mean, you and I with some other buddies, we've camped in tents, gone backpacking.
Right.
You know, like guys are pretty much okay with anything. I don't want to be a slob, but I'm okay with just about any living conditions. I don't care. We keep nice houses for our wives and our kids. That's what it boils down to.
I could live in a shed with a bed and air conditioning. Yeah. As long as attached to it was like a garage or something.
Now, see, that's important.
Exactly. And that's where my priority lies.
Well, clearly, like, you have a really killer, like, shop that you just recently built. I mean, I have not seen this in person, but I have been living vicariously through pictures and videos of it.
Right.
And I'm even thinking about, like, next time we come up to visit, you know, maybe bringing some work that needs to be done on Amy's car.
Bring a car
and just
with
bring
you.
some stuff, you know, to, like, hey, or maybe I could even have parts shipped straight to your house, and like, hey, we're going to work on this while we're here.
That would be my favorite. I mean, when we bought this house, we just moved here about a year ago. And we moved from a really small, not so fantastic house.
Now that house needed some stuff.
It needed all the things, but it was on 5 acres, right? And it did have a 30 by 50 barn, but it also needed a ton of things.
And what would have made that barn so much better is if like the floor was like this instead of, you know, like 6 different, and the river that would flow through it in the rain. I'm not joking.
He poured it by hand in sections, and then decided like this section over here is going to be this tall, and this section is going to be this tall, and you just couldn't make it a functional workspace.
No,
the idea of that whole place was solid. Yeah, the implementation was
a bit lacking.
Quite it was lacking, and so when
did the previous owner, was he the one that put that shop there, that barn there?
He put everything.
Well, I mean, I'm saying because like I know his handiwork because I helped you tear down like the dome. The dome. I mean, maybe I'll dig up the video and like overlay that on this just later on.
If you're cool with that, the dome like, down with my Danger Ranger.
Brandon Tucker. Oh, Brandon has we were talking about short regular cab long wheelbase trucks and how those need to come back, right?
Yes, they do.
Like, shout out to Dakota. I know, like, if you check this out, you're gonna be like, yeah, that's my jam. But Brandon Tucker had one of those trucks. Now he has that old. Does he still have that old Ford truck, the dually that I had to drive
yes,
and almost
he does.
died in?
You almost died.
I almost died in that
Both
truck.
Almost died
with
in
you
that
right
truck.
behind me, like witnessing it. But
it was a close call.
yeah, it was a very close call.
That was one of those almost met my maker kind of days.
I did, and I'm sure the truck might have survived because it looks like it survived a lot. But the truck Brandon had at the time was like a Chevy with a long wheelbase, long bed, and a short cab. It was a great truck, and
It was a great
we had to
truck.
pull that dome away
Down.
from the house, and I got a good slow-mo video of that happening, and I'll try to dig that up and see if it still exists.
It was great, but when we started looking for this house, I travel a lot for work, that I always have. And we went and looked at a couple houses together and put bids in, but we live around Nashville, so it doesn't matter. You put a bid in, you put it in for 30 or 50,000 over asking,
Ooh.
and then someone else comes in behind you and either beats that bid or says, you know what, we're going to go all cash, no contingencies, whatever. So we just kept losing. And so I told Ashley, I was like, just go look at houses. I need an office and I need a garage. If it has those two things, I don't care about the rest.
Yeah.
Just go. And so she found this place, and you've been here a couple times. This house is really cool, but there
Absolutely.
was no garage.
I actually, I was visiting you before you actually had, like, I don't know if you hadn't
yeah.
closed on it yet, but, like, you were about to close or about to take possession of it. And, like, you're like, hey, come check out this house with me. Like, let's look it over. And I'm like, yeah, dude, this thing's tight,
Yeah, it's super cool, but it was a decent sized backyard, but no existing garage or shop. There's a dog nearby.
I hear the doggy.
I think she's trying to get in the room, but she'll be okay.
Yeah.
And so we just had the space to put up that building.
Well, yeah, you cut down a few trees, trim some stuff up, put a fence up. I mean, just, it didn't need much as far as, like, the house. The inside of the house is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Outside the property needed a little maintenance, but, yeah, you kind of dressed it up nice and made it home,
Yeah, no, it's come together nice. But to your point of guys can live anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I could be in a single wide trailer from the 70s right now that leaks from the roof somewhere.
Somewhere.
But as long as I had that shop out back, I'd be thrilled.
Well, let's be honest, like the barn dominium, thing that's happening now, and there's one down the road from your house on Highway 76, over there on the east side, like, I don't know how far down, but south of Portland.
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, when I see that place, when I drive past it, I'm like, this dude gets it,
It looks great.
It does.
There's another one down on 109, and he built, like, his house is a barn dominium, and then he built a big shop behind it that semis can drive through.
Oh, what?
It gets big, so I don't know if he owns a trucking company or what,
yeah.
But that, to me, is, like, the ultimate dream home, is to end up in a barn dominium on some land.
Yeah, and if you don't know what a barn dominium is, you're just not as cool as us, is what it boils down to.
And you're not wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So now you talked about, like, traveling for work a lot. So let me back that story way up. So you and I, well, first of all, talking about cars, I want to just get a little bit of backstory, like, because if anybody's watching this and we're a few minutes in, they're like, why are we even, like, this is fun. Like, I hope it's fun for other people because you and I are having a good time, and that's what really matters.
Right.
That's what really matters. Like,
I'm here for me.
Yeah, if zero people, like, end up saying, like, oh, that was worthwhile, well, check out another episode. Maybe you'll enjoy that better. Maybe not. I don't know. But, you and I first met, like, I don't know if you remember the first time we met, but here's how I would sum it up. You were having a hard time doing a brake job. And your parents were going to the church. You hadn't started coming there yet. Your parents were going to the church that I was at, and your mom's like, "Hey, can you go help out my son? Like, he's helping out this this girl." And you guys ended up getting married. You and your wife now. Like, for how many years have it been? Like a dozen, 13 years, 13. Yeah, it's a good long time.
It's a good long time.
And so you were working. I think it was that little black Ford Escape. And I would rather never have to work on a Ford Escape again.
It was awful.
I don't even remember what it was, and I think you pretty much had it, but I think your mom was just, I don't know what she was trying to do, but it's like, okay, so I went over there and I was like, well, I mean, just do this, you got it, it's pretty much done. I think you just didn't have the right tools with you or something, because you had just moved up from the lovely town of Corinth, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Booming metropolis these days, I think.
Really is. They got a Chick-fil-A now, so they've really stepped up their game.
Don't knock towns that just got their first Chick-fil-A, okay? Hey, does Portland have a Chick-fil-A?
It does not.
Yeah, we've got a Chipotle too, son. We got a Chick-fil-A and a Chipotle. So
you guys are there.
We're on our way up, you know.
You're living the dream at this point.
Zephyr Hills is the largest town in Pasco County, which is like a bedroom county from Tampa. So we've got it going on here.
Yeah, you guys are really getting it done.
We are. But so like that's when I kind of first met you, and then sometime after that you guys were coming around to the church, and you were in and out of there. You worked a lot of like nights and weekends at the good old Mapco, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
You had like 2 jobs going on, I think, at that point. So what's it like having that kind of hustle going? I mean, you're young. You're like, here's my take on it. When you're young, you don't know how to make money as well as when you're older. Like you just haven't learned enough to like really be successful at earning good income. So you have to work a lot of hours doing a lot of things, but you're also kind of figuring out like, what do you want to stick with, you know?
Right.
Because you could have stuck at Mapco and probably been making $100,000 a year managing a store if that's what you wanted to do.
Right.
I don't know what they actually cap out at, but you know, maybe.
I don't know either. I would imagine once you're up on that corporate or district level, you're probably making 6 figures. I would think so. So at the time, when I'm fixing those brakes, I'm 17.
Yeah, definitely young.
Ashley may or may not have been pregnant at that point in time.
I mean, I feel like she was, but I wasn't knowing whether that was, where you wanted to share.
Unless somebody wants to do math, they're going to have to figure that out on their own.
Yeah.
And then we may or may have not gotten married when I was 18. And we bought our house and had a kid. And she already had 2 kids, so I'm 18, she's 21, and we got 3 kids.
You got like instant family thing going on there.
Instant, right? And then and
that's got to be weird, like, because I mean, you were pretty, compared to like other like 17, 18-year-olds, you were pretty like ready to take on responsibility and do what it takes. But at the same time, like an 18-year-old is still a kid. I don't care what we thought at the time, and so now you're a kid helping raise. A kid of your own plus 2 stepkids, like that's huge to take that on.
No, I don't think any 18-year-old is ready for that. I don't care how mature you are. You're not ready for that.
I was in my 30s when we had our kid, and I wasn't ready, but I mean, like, here we are. And I mean, in all fairness, we're doing pretty awesome, but I mean, at least the way it seems so far, we'll see, time will tell.
No one is ever ready for a kid, is my assessment. No one is ever. There's not like a point in time where you can go, today's the day. We're mature enough. We're financially set enough. Because there's more to it than those 2 factors. But we get married, right? And I took a job when I was 17 working in a warehouse in Nashville, just as a parts distribution center for mobile homes.
That company still comes through my town like twice a week, and they camp out at the Road Star Motel. They pull their whole truck in and they stay inside.
They always cracked me up. Guys always stayed at the cheapest places.
Oh, dude.
Yes, they still do.
I'll be honest, it's actually a decent place, but it's like an outside hallway motel, with like the doors open outside to the air, which is Florida. Yes. Who cares? That's perfect. But it's actually, the rooms are some of the nicest in our town, which, to be honest, isn't saying that much. But people just look down on it because it's not a name brand. It's like Roadstar Inn or something. And but yeah, their trucks parked there all the time.
I've stayed in one motel professionally in my life, and so the thing is, hotels have hallways, motels don't. And so if it doesn't have an air conditioned hallway, I won't stay in it.
Yeah.
And that's no knock on motels. My early experience into traveling, I stayed at one because it was like $70 a night. It's like, I'm going to save the company some money.
And they actually don't care. Like, they're not going to pat you on the back for that.
Yeah, most decent-sized companies don't care that you save them $30 or $40 a night in a hotel. And 2, it was not the best motel experience I'd ever had. I got in the room and I didn't even want to sleep in the bed, so I just slept on the bed.
On the bed.
Yeah.
Which may or may not be any better.
Right, exactly. So did not do that, but no, you were correct. I worked at the warehouse Monday through Friday, usually sometimes Saturdays, and then I worked 3rd shift on the weekends at Mapco.
On the motel note, though, like, let's be honest, you remember better, like those cheap motels. You remember them I mean, Amy and I, in some of our travels back in the early years, when we were broke, we would stay at like a Motel 6 somewhere on the way to like out of town somewhere. Like we stayed at a Motel 6 in Little Rock. And there was this dude, we pull in, it's like almost midnight, and we pull in there. I'm like, well, if we drive straight through, we're going to Oklahoma City for my brother's wedding. I'm like, if we drive straight through, first of all, I'm going to be dead tired. Second of all, we're going to be there, at like 6 a.m. And then what, So like, let's just go ahead and get a room. It's like Motel 6 back in the day was like $36. So it's like, whatever, we'll drop $40 after tax, no big deal. And we pull in, and there's this dude just hanging out outside, leaning up against the building. We're like, whatever. We go straight in our room. And like Amy didn't sleep. She was just like, I'm not having this. Me, I'm like, I'm the driver. Like I can sleep anywhere. Again, guys, we're content with whatever. And so I'm like, whatever. I go to sleep, but not for long. Like at 4 a.m., I'm awake again. I've got 4 hours of sleep. I'm ready to roll. Go outside. Same dude, same place, just hanging out. I'm like,
he's still just out there.
Oh yeah. And then I stayed at I don't even remember, some no-name hotel at a conference like for lawn and landscape stuff in Louisville, the Green Industry Expo. And my business partner and I, we've got a lawn business down here, and he and I are staying at this place. Like by the time we booked our hotel, there's like nothing available close to the conference thing in Louisville. And so we stay at whatever this place is, and I promise you, it looked like Baghdad 2004. Okay, there's a whole section.
There's a tank blown up out front.
Not quite that, but there's like the first part of the hotel, and then the second part of the hotel is over here. And then there's this whole section that's literally like, if you could have taken a saw and chopped it down, there's wires hanging out and plumbing capped off. Like they literally cut out a section of it, and there's just rubble on the ground with a fence around it. And we're like, all right, as long as the room is decent, which it was. But every time we would come out, there was the same dude outside our stairwell, outside, and it's like, okay, I'll nod and be like, hey, what's up, man, and keep going.
What's he doing there?
I don't know. He's like the guys over on like Dickerson Pike in Nashville that are selling socks at 1 a.m., like 3 pairs for $1.50. It's like, you're not selling 3 pairs of socks. Like that's not what you're selling,
Especially not for $1.50.
Not for $1.50. I mean, that was 15 years ago, but nonetheless, like, no, that's not what. Like they had socks, and I'm sure you could go buy 3 pair for $1.50, but they'd be like, "What else do you need?" I'm like, "Just the socks, man. I'm a poor college kid. I need socks,
I just need the socks. Yeah, nothing else."
Oh man. But yeah, like so you're like, you got the hustle going on. You're working, a couple different jobs, and then eventually you started like working at an insulation distributor warehouse.
Right.
And you're driving. You're just driving a truck, and you're making what, $11 an hour to start?
Yeah. No, it was. So I'm trying to think back. Blevins when I started there. I hope we're allowed to say their name.
I don't see why not.
I don't think they'll care.
I mean, we haven't said anything negative about them. Their drivers stay in my town in the Roadstar Motel. If they want to take that as a slight, they can do that. I don't care, but it's not intended that way. I'm just saying I see their truck twice a week in my town. Like they're coming and going,
I think I made $9 an hour when I started there, and this would have been like 2000, like summer of 07.
Yeah.
And then by summer of 18, I'm still there, and then I started doing the MAPCO thing, and I think that was 10 or $11 an hour. And I do that for like a year and a half, and that was just brutal because we were working all in, most weeks I'd work 90 to 100 hours a week between the two jobs, and you can only do that for so long.
That's true. I mean, there's some guys that say, "Oh, you can do that forever." No, you can't.
You can't.
You just can't.
The nail in the coffin for us is I was coming home. I'd worked all day on a Friday at the warehouse from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Drove home, showered, ate dinner, changed, drove back to my midnight job. Right, worked 10 to 6, and then on my drive home the next morning, I fell asleep on the interstate and like drove into the big gravelly area. Didn't hit the barrier. That woke me up, and I was able to correct. And I just kind of parked on the side of the interstate for a minute. And I was like, okay, we gotta figure something else out.
Something's got to change.
And so we go. I mean, I literally a buddy of mine had moved over to this insulation distributor. I was like, hey man, we need somebody. Would you come drive a truck for me? He's like, there's a lot of opportunity and growth at this place. It might be an opportunity for you to move on and start doing different things. And so I took that job, and then I had started up a cleaning business at the time at nights, because that's what I started as soon as I turned 18. The day I turned 18, I went and got a business license. and I started a cleaning company in 2008.
Now you'd had
And
some
so-
experience with that because like your parents had done cleaning businesses and stuff.
Yeah, when we were kids, we my parents had a cleaning business that did the same thing, cleaning commercial offices at night. So we would go clean houses from like 9 p.m. to like 6 a.m. in the night, me and my two brothers and my dad. And so we did that for well over a year and a half when I was, 8, 9 years old. So I knew how to do it, and I actually got in touch with the people that my parents contracted for a decade before that, and they were still in business. And so they were like, "Yep, we can put you to work." But then 2.5 months go by, and the economy's pretty much in pieces, and that's the first thing everybody cuts. So I turn 18, and I'm making crap money during the day at the warehouse, but I'm making pretty decent money at night, and I was probably making $15 to $20 an hour. Depending on the jobs I was doing. And then that only lasted a couple months and was gone. So that's where the MAPCO thing came in. Well, fast forward a couple years, I get the job with the insulation warehouse driving the truck. And then I was cleaning just a couple car dealerships for a guy.
Nice.
And those paid out pretty good. I was making a couple grand a month cleaning those. But the problem with a place like a car dealership is you got to clean it every night.
Yeah.
They were closed on Sundays, so you're cleaning that place 6 nights a week, and it has to happen sometime between 9-ish when they're finishing up that last deal or trying to, and before they open back up at 10 a.m. the next morning. It's got to be cleaned again.
Yeah.
And so you had to do it all the time. Holidays didn't really matter because they were usually still open. So anyway, we carried that on for about a year and a half.
Like Ashley was helping you sometimes with that too. Like she's working some of the nights and things like that. You're kind of sharing it, splitting it, whatever.
Towards the end of those contracts, I mean, because when I started driving for that distribution center, and this because you came and drove for me for a year and a half.
I did.
Some mornings you'd start at 7, some mornings you'd start at 3.
Dude,
it's so.
I remember. I still remember the pain of waking up at like 2 a.m. to drive, up to Goodlettsville, go to the warehouse, fire up the truck, do a pre-trip inspection, check, make sure the load is right, all that stuff, and then get out of there, hoping that like the guy the night before, if it was somebody else driving the truck, that they actually fueled it up like they're supposed to.
Right.
And it's amazing, like how simple some of that stuff is. Right. And guys like won't do it. I mean, I like I said, I got a lawn business. We got guys. I'm like, listen, it's going to be 100 degrees here at the end of the day, and you're not going to feel like working that late. You want to get done before it's that nasty. So fuel your equipment up, your mowers, your gas cans, your truck. Fuel it up at the end of the day, so that in the morning at 7 a.m. you can get straight to work. Yep. And like between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. you get 90% of your work done. And then you just do the detail stuff at the end, like take lunch break and then just work for a couple hours and get it knocked out. And they're like, no, we'll just go to the gas station at 7. We'll screw around for a few minutes because somebody showed up late. Then we'll leave. We'll go there. Then we'll get we'll fuel up and then go in and get sandwiches like after the one guy is done fueling everything up because we just sat in the truck on our phones for 25 minutes. It's like, are you guys dumb?
Well, and especially in like trades like yours, like, they're costing them money and they're costing themselves money. Yeah. And it just doesn't, it'll never cease to amaze me, but those are the same guys, right, that don't take the buggy back after they're done grocery shopping.
Oh, now you just dropped like a real like southern thing there, the buggy. It's a thing, it's a shopping cart, okay? It's a cart. A buggy is like what the Amish use behind the horse,
It's a grocery buggy.
It's not a buggy though.
I mean, it will forever in my heart be a buggy.
You're a true Southerner, my friend. I live in Florida where there's so many northern transplants that I don't really feel like I'm in the South like I did when I lived in Tennessee.
Sure. So do you say pop now?
I don't, because Tennessee beat that out of me. They beat that out of me so much because I moved from Michigan to Tennessee, and I'm like, hey, do you guys have any pop? And they're like, and they literally laughed at me. Like, I was in my 20s when I moved there, and there would be these like 18, 19-year-old girls laughing at my face for calling it pop. They're like, oh, do you like pop? I'm like, okay, fine. What do you guys call it? They're like, it's Coke. I'm like, but I like Pepsi. They're like, it's all Coke. I'm like, what if I want a Sprite? They're like, that's Coke too. I'm like, you guys don't understand. You don't understand things,
No, it's so true. Like, if you told me to get you a Coke, I'd bring you back a Dr. Pepper.
Well, because
Hands
I want a
down.
Dr. Pepper.
I know you want a Dr. Pepper, but I'm just saying, like, it's Coke. And if I tell you a Coke and you know me well enough and you bring me back a Coke, I'm going to be mad. Because I didn't want a Coke. I wanted a Dr. Pepper.
I wanted a Dr. Pepper, exactly. Oh, my goodness. So,
But that's just how it is here.
Oh, man, where were we, though? We were talking about...
We're talking jobs. We're talking jobs. So I switch over to the distribution company, and towards the end of that, like those early mornings, I just couldn't do it. You know, you can't work till 2 a.m., go home, sleep for an hour and a half, and then hop in a truck that could weigh upwards of 24,
it's not
23,
safe.
24,000 pounds. Exactly. And so I was like, Ashley, I'm going to have some help transitioning out of this. So I had one of those contracts for a year. I think we were halfway through it, and she pretty much for the last 6 months of that did 80% of it.
That's I think I remember that. That's just
because I just couldn't. So she'd be home with the kids during the day, and then I would come home. We'd try to live a normal family life in the afternoon, and then around 9 or 10 o'clock, she'd go clean for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And so we did that because right around that time is when the guy who pulled me over was leaving. And so I hadn't been with them too long. I'd been there maybe 4 to 6 months, and they were like, hey, we're opening a branch in Kentucky in Louisville. Will you go open it and run it for us? And I had no desire to move. And I said, no, thanks. I appreciate it. If this place ever comes open, then I'd love that. And so within a couple months it did. I think, 6 to 8 months of being there, he left and I took over and started running that place as, the warehouse manager. And it wasn't inside of 2 months of there that you would come over and started driving for me.
Yeah. Man, I remember that because that was when I had I was working on staff at a church that you were attending at Nazarene Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and we were there, and my mentor Ryan Brown was the pastor, and I loved that time. And then all of a sudden, like out of the blue, I'm mowing these lawns, back then, like I can't seem to get away from lawn mowing, but I'm mowing grass up there, and like people from the district for the Nazarene Church, I was talking to them. I'm like, hey, if you ever need help around around Nashville at any properties, let me know. So they had like 3 or 4 churches that were kind of like in limbo. Maybe they're going to sell them. They weren't sure because there wasn't much happening there. The congregation was closed down or something, or had moved and their buildings were for sale. And so like, yeah, could you mow these? So I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'd do that. And there was this one of them that, this was at a time where I was very happy where I was at. Like, it was a great church with great folks, great, my pastor, Ryan, was just such a good mentor, and I loved working with him. I was, an associate on staff at his church, just kind of like helping him out behind the scenes with a lot of that stuff, and I loved it there. And then all of a sudden, God started being like, hey, I'm out at this property mowing, and I just felt this like drawing there. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And so I started talking with the district leadership, and they're like, yeah, if you want to go like preach there a couple times. And so I went and preached there to fill in. And then all of a sudden it was like the people were like, hey, could you be our pastor? I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't work that way. Like, I can't just say yes to that. Like, there's a process that the district has to go through. And so that was a big, long story that, isn't here nor there for this podcast, but, I'm eventually I start there. I'm leading that congregation. Like, I'm jumping in feet first, like, okay, here we go. I'm going to learn some stuff, and about leading a church. And so I didn't feel like I needed to be running my lawn service anymore, because it was just dividing my time so much, and I was focused on it too much and really wasn't getting the satisfaction or enjoyment out of it. And I'd moved 30 minutes away to the church's parsonage so I could be closer to where that church was. And so I'm like, you know what? I still need an income, though, because that was a church that didn't really provide one. It provided a house, but not an income. So I'm like, I need money. And so I remember talking with you and like, hey, I might be interested sometime in coming to work for you. And you're like, okay, I will hire you like today. I'm like, I'm not ready today. Well, I was like, give me a couple months and we'll see what happens. And then like a couple weeks later, or maybe not even that long, you're like, I need you right now. And do you remember why? Do you remember what had happened?
I remember so many things that happened.
I mean, it was.
I went through a couple individuals, one that we both knew.
Yeah. No, this was. Well, yeah. There was that.
There was that. There was another guy that I'd hired, and he worked for me for 3 weeks, and he filled the diesel truck up with gas.
That was it.
And then I think that might have been the final straw.
That was
Yeah,
the
that was
final straw. Like, I think he had done some other stuff, but that was the one where I think you called me literally on the way to pick him up off the side of the road.
Yeah,
because he had ruined, and it was a rental truck too. It wasn't even like a company truck. He was in a Penske.
It was. Well, and what was terrible is he didn't just like fill it up with gas, and
he filled it up and drove it.
Exactly. He filled it up and he turned it on and went for a drive with 8,000 pounds of cargo in the back. It was like, oh, I only went a couple miles, and then it messed up. Oh,
yeah, no kidding, man.
Yeah, and then before that, he like was on the forklift and like rose it up in the thing and popped, part of the fiberglass roof off. And before that,
I mean, who hasn't like pushed on the roof a little bit with the forklift because they weren't paying attention? Like,
sure, we all have. Yeah, all of us have fallen short right there.
Now, you know what he didn't do? He didn't leave the truck running all night multiple times during his tenure there. I don't think he did. We had somebody else that did that once.
No, and then there's still a list at that office actually that has been handed down from manager to manager.
Good.
When I took a promotion years later, and I handed the list to the guy who took over, and I said, "This is now your responsibility. Anytime really, really not smart things happen, you write them on this list." And then when he moved on, he did the same thing, handed it down. So
I'm glad
that
to hear
list still exists.
I remember what that notepad looks like because I started that note. And to be honest, like, there was probably the best story was after my time there, after I had moved down here to Florida. Like, I came back to visit, I'm hanging out, and I remember that manager telling the story. Like, you were like, hey, tell him about the guy driving the forklift out of the truck. And I was like, I've got to hear this. And so watching him tell this story was great. But the guy didn't lock the parking brake on the truck, and it's fine on level
ground. Or put it in park.
It's just in neutral.
It also had a parking gear. He just left it in neutral and was like, that's good.
That's good enough. And so he's going in and out from the loading dock into the truck, and then hit the gas really hard in reverse, and the reverse motion of the tires pushed the truck forward. But when you're in that truck driving in and out, you're in this tunnel, and you don't really have much sensation of what's happening.
Well, there's so much movement happening.
A lot. The truck is
when you
rocking.
drive in anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and so apparently he shot the truck out from underneath the forklift, and the whole forklift went almost 4 feet down to the ground.
Oh yeah. I mean, at least 4.5 feet.
Amazingly, didn't kill it or himself.
Yeah, it landed on its. So apparently, it lands on the four wheels, and from the inside, all the manager hears is, "Ah!" And he goes out there and sees the guy just gripping the steering wheel, screaming, "Ah!"
I'm just picturing that when he's telling that story. I'm like, oh my goodness, dude. What a bad day.
What a bad day for that.
And what a testimony to those forklifts surviving that. I mean, because that's
still there.
7,000 or 8,000 pounds just straight down onto the concrete.
That forklift still there, still works.
Still works, man. That's amazing. But that job had its hard moments, but overall, it wasn't bad. I mean, if I was still living up there, I would probably be just as happy continuing to work there in some capacity. Sure. I wouldn't want to be doing those early mornings anymore, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were rough. But it was, it was fun. It had its enjoyable moments for sure. And I look back, fondly at that. I mean, I've had quite a few little jobs here and there. And I know you have too, but I mean, that one was a good time. And, we got to work with some folks that, were some good friends at, different times too. So, I still remember a guy that had come in. He had actually shot somebody in the leg for whatever the reason was. And we told him, people would come in and be like, hey, can I work here? And you would ask anybody, okay, but I'm telling you, if you have any convictions on your record, I can't do anything about it. This company won't hire you.
Right.
And this dude,
or at least tell me on the front end, prepare me, let me know if something's going to come up, so I can see if we can make it work. This guy was like, "Nah, man, everything's good. I'm good to go." He fills out an application, and then I get a comment back from the HR team. They're like, "Yeah, this guy did a decade in prison for shooting someone." And so I think I had to call him back and tell him, we had to move on to a different candidate, give the HR spiel. And then we're sitting in the office one day, and there's a camera up in the corner, and we see his truck pull in. And I remember looking at you going, well, today's the day.
I remember, and I'm not going to say his name, but you're like, hey, so-and-so is going to come shoot us today. Like, this is the day, that is happening. And I just remember that. There was also another guy that had done time for legit killing someone, and he never did anything negative towards us, but we knew that had happened, and so we would hit the Dunkin' Donuts a lot before work and just have him, but we would keep him in like the side office, like the manager of the whole thing. And I remember when that guy would show up, though, we'd be like, hey man, you want some donuts? Like we would always share whatever we had with him and his crew. Like we're like, just want to make sure, to stay on this guy's good side. It was like, what was that movie with it was like Steve Buscemi and Billy, was it Billy Madison, I think? One of those movies with him where he's like, well, glad I called that guy. Yeah, he's like, glad I called that guy,
Yeah, because he calls and apologizes, and he pulls out a list and marks off his name.
Guess I don't have to hurt him, And
then he goes back to putting his lipstick on.
His lipstick on.
One of the best scenes.
Yeah, he's like, glad I called that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Glad I called that guy.
Or Dane Cook feeding a candy bar to,
when we first started this conversation, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah,
he's like
that Dane Kid skit.
That one guy in the office that might go with a shotgun and like take everybody out one day when he snaps. Like, make sure you always like hook him up with something. So he's like, oh, you're cool. I'll leave you alone.
He goes from office stops. Oh, hey Steve. Steve. He goes on about his business.
Oh man.
Dane Cook, man, I feel like he definitely had a certain type of comedy.
He did, and it's not for everyone.
It's not, and it took me a while to come around to it.
It did.
But then once I did, it was like he went from like this level of fame, he just disappeared.
I don't know what happened to him.
He was just gone.
Him and like another one was John Caparulo. I always liked him, the short little kind of roly-poly guy. And like he had this like stuttering act that he, not really stuttering, but just kind of tripping over his words and stuff. And he just had this perfect timing with it. And it was a very unique comedy that he had that was really good. And it's like, what happened to him? Where'd he go? So
sometimes they just disappear, man.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't the life for them.
Maybe they decided they didn't want it anymore.
They're like, that I can do this, but it's a lot of travel, and maybe they got married or had a family or whatever. They're like, this isn't for me.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, and I think there's probably a bit of a lesson in that for all of us. It's just kind of like, hey, you might have found yourself trapped in something you don't want to do. I mean, you were talking about, even your cleaning business, you could have made really killer money off of that, if you'd stuck with it over the years. But at the same time, it's like almost impossible to, be a family man or to, to be there with your family or whatever if you're up all night, cleaning, and it's difficult. So you're at a part that's like, it's not for me anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's even hard to do vacation.
Oh yeah, you can't get out of town. You can't do any of that.
Yeah, unless you've got quality people that work for you, which is a whole another story.
No, man, that's difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
Being able to take off is just brutal. So those are tough jobs, and kudos to people who do them.
So, like, you've been in charge of hiring and letting go. I mean, that's part of your job. And that's like, if you really look forward to that, it's never good. I mean, there's some times where you're like, man, I'm so ready for this person to not be here anymore because they've caused so many problems. But overall, we never, like, look forward to firing anyone. But, I mean, you've hired a lot of people. How many candidates do you feel like you have to go through? I don't just mean resumes. I mean actually, like, how many hires do you go through on the average for an average position just to like get the person you're looking for? I mean, does it feel like it's pretty high?
It's different now, right? So with the distribution company we both worked together at, I moved into a regional operations position, and I helped. By the end, I covered, I think, 14 branches. One time was my biggest region, and that was like in 7 or 8 states. And so I had to keep managers in each of those.
Right.
And then if they were short, like say there was no manager, then I would hire for the drivers or get the salesman to help me.
And sometimes you were having to travel there and fill in for a couple weeks to like patch stuff up where there's leaks and stuff.
And so let's go back 4 or 5 years, you'd put an ad out for a driver or a manager and you would get 100, 200 applicants, which isn't the same anymore. That doesn't happen anymore. But you would get that, and I always said 10%. So if there was 200 people and I called or emailed all of them, maybe 20 would call me back.
Wow.
Then out of that 20, I talked to all of them. I probably wouldn't want to talk to more than 2 to 4 of them anyway. Then I would call.
Yeah, because you'd
and
have
be
like
hey,
criteria. You'd kind of filter them out. Here's your top few candidates. You're going to call them
Right.
first, or
But I
contact
would-
them first.
in that arena, I would still invite more, like the maybes and the probably nots.
Yeah.
I would probably still invite them because maybe sometimes you're just not great at writing a resume, or
That's
you're,
true.
You're anxious or nervous on the phone, and I feel like if I
What
get
about
somebody
the
in a room,
guy that drove dump truck 15 year?
oh man,
That was a
you
fabulous resume.
You'd get resumes like that more than you could imagine, where it was just like, I work hard, I drive truck around, review job.
Yeah, it's like what? I don't even know what you're saying.
just-
Like I feel like I need a decoder, like a thing to
you
put
felt
over
like
it. Just like
6-year-old had written them. I mean,
Yeah.
so those are instant no's for me. If I'm looking at your resume, those are just hard passes.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, 10 to 20% was usually my rule. And so you would interview these guys, and then you'd call and say you talked to 10 people that you wanted to come show up in person. Maybe one or two of them shows up, which just always just kind of blew my mind. But there were certain times you just get lucky, and you see a resume and you're like, this guy. And
Yeah.
you call him and you talk to him, or girl or whatever, and they're like, instantly you're like, this is the person. They've got this. And I made a couple lucky hires like that where
sure.
found a resume, you know, in the top of the pile, knew that they were going to be it, talked to them, had dinner with them, they were it. There was other times at branches where went through 6 managers in 3 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, to my knowledge, at that business, I'm not there anymore. They're still trying to find the right manager for that location because it's in a tough city.
Yeah.
And so there's so many factors when you're talking about hiring,
Sure.
you know, what's going to make somebody efficient and functional in a position.
And so some of that might have something to do with the region, you know, like, I mean, the region of the country, that part of that country, maybe that city or that state, not necessarily their educational system, but like some of the things they're doing to, you know, like what are they doing to actually produce individuals who are going to be good for businesses, you know, people that are ready to work, you know, anyone can produce, store clerks, construction workers, not knocking on them. I'm just saying like that doesn't take any kind of special training, but some, you know, like in Florida, they've got a lot of programs in some of their public schools that are focusing people on job readiness, even in high school ages, so that if they go to a college, if they go to a tech or a trade school, you know, they've actually kind of learned a lot of stuff to be really hireable. And,
Right.
and so, I mean, you know, we can knock a lot on like state-run educational institutions and things like that. I think some of that's fair, but you know, if there's something that they could excel at, that's one of the things, you know, so much. And I think, I'm not a politics guy, but I remember like George Bush, when he was president, getting into this like No Child Left Behind stuff. And they're so focused on testing scores and not actually on the finished, I don't want to call it product, but like the finished thing, the finished work in when kids are graduating. Like, are you actually going to be useful in a job setting somewhere? Because you've got to be.
Well, and I feel like our school system is so antiquated. The idea of how it works is so far past where we are as a society, in the sense of I don't need to be in 9th or 10th grade in high school telling you what the presidents were. I don't. That is so far gone. I can look that up on my phone. I don't need to know that anymore. And let's be honest, at 0 points in my life, besides trivia night, you know, at the local sub shop, do I need to know who the 32nd president was?
Oh man,
You just
I'm telling
don't.
you.
You don't need that in life. I think our high school should be focused on trades, and interests that kids have, so they can be successful in those jobs.
And that's not saying like some old timer like, oh, we've got to be, you know, we got to have manufacturing and this and that. I mean, yeah, I think there's some merit to that, but you know, trades it doesn't have to be like the trades of, you know, 40 years ago, where it's like you have I mean, I think a shop class would be fantastic, and I think it's very necessary. You know, look how many people actually don't know anything about the car they drive, and if something goes wrong, they're screwed, you know. But beyond that, I mean, you know, it could be computer programming, it could be whatever, I don't care, but be ready for something by the time you graduate high school, because college honestly isn't for everyone. I mean, I don't follow him all the time, but I agree with a lot of what Mike Rowe says. You know, he's got like, I think it's Mike Rowe Works and some other stuff that he does where he's like saying, hey, I don't hate colleges, but man, don't try to force every kid to go to college.
Right.
And, you know, you didn't like, did you ever go to any like, did you ever hit college at all? Like a community college thing or anything?
No, I mean, I never finished high school.
Right.
I got my GED.
Right.
And then I looked at some college programs, but like, what
is it going to benefit
teach
you where
me?
you're at right now?
Well, I mean, you go back even 6-7 years ago. The whole reason I got my GED is they hired at that distribution center. They hired an operations manager, and he had picked me along with some other guys to kind of test us and see, our readiness to take on bigger roles.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, I was reviewing your personnel file the other day, and I don't see any. Where did you graduate high school?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't." And he was like, "Well, you sound educated enough." He's like, "I assumed you had like an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree." And I was like, "No, man, I just read a lot." And he was like, "Well, you need to go at least get your GED done." He's like, "Just go knock that out so we can have it on paper in case somebody ever asks." And so I did that, and then I looked at the college stuff. But at that point in time, am I going to go take a generic business logistics, degree? And are they going to teach me anything I don't already know?
I mean, what you've already learned in, what's it been? Probably about, 8 or 9 years since you like kind of moved into that, just kind of managing that warehouse distribution center, about 9 years ago or so. I mean, just from what you've learned from then on, you've learned a ton of stuff in the job, but you also apply yourself to what you're doing. And like you say, you can read stuff. I mean, just grabbing your phone, you can be connected to all the knowledge of the world right there. And that's not saying college is worthless, but if you find yourself in a position where you don't feel like you're 100% there, find something. I don't care whether it's a book, an audio book. I mean, at this point, here we are doing a podcast. One of the things over the last several years, and especially during the pandemic, is like everybody and their brother's doing a podcast. And I think that's good because, hey, this one might not be everyone's cup of tea right here, but at the same time, there's going to be something that piques your interest. And I listen to a few pretty regularly, and then I get some guys like, "Oh, you got to listen to this one." And I try it out. I'm like, "No, thanks. It's just a bunch of dudes talking over each other. I'm not interested in that. If I wanted that, I'd go watch The View on ABC or whatever." And which I can't stand. Like, I don't even care about their opinions. It's just where they're like, yeah. But yeah, I mean,
what was that movie that she did back in the 90s? She was the
Ghost.
No, not Ghost. No.
With Patrick Swayze.
No. We're not making any pottery tonight, buddy. Sister something where she was in the singing.
Oh yeah,
with the choir,
the Sisterhood or whatever.
No,
or whatever. I remember.
There was a couple.
But I remember what it was. She was like
Sister Act.
Sister Act. Yeah, that's what it was.
I loved that. I loved Whoopi as a kid. And that's what I hate about all of the celebrity now, though, or at least a bunch of them. I don't want your opinion. I want you to be a celebrity and do like a movie or sing a song, and then I want it to end there. I don't want to know your opinion because it's going to sway my opinion now of your art or your work.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, there's actually some where I'm like, I've actually become unfan, like a non-fan anymore. It's like I don't have any animosity. I used to love the band U2. And I still, I say used to. I loved their stuff up until, 1987, 89, somewhere around there. And then after that, it kind of got weird. But sometimes
I just forced their whole album on your iPhone.
And so that was the thing. Like, whenever that happened a few years back, I'm like, how do I delete? I can't even delete this, Like, this is the worst. Does it get any worse than that? I don't know if it does.
I don't think so. I don't think it gets any worse than an album getting put on your iPhone and you can't take it off.
And let's be honest, what do you remember the album cover for that? It was like two dudes hugging, but it was like as if one of them was pregnant, almost like that pose, like where he's down, like hugging the belly of the other guy.
It was terrible.
There was
not a single good song on there.
No, there wasn't. I tried.
I
tried to like it.
I did too.
There was some stuff from what was it? How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, I think was the name of the one album a few years before that I kind of like. This isn't bad. This is kind of getting back to the roots. It's still not Joshua Tree. It's not War or Boy or whatever, but it's all right. But dude, that was the only decent thing, and maybe I think I like Beautiful Day from that. What was the name of that album where they're in the Heathrow Airport on the cover?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I like Beautiful Day and maybe a couple other songs.
Yeah.
Like that one wasn't a terrible album. But all through the 2000s, they just didn't have anything that I cared for. And it's like, I understand if you want to have a cause to support, they did the what was it, Band-Aid or Farm Aid or whatever they did in
Right.
the 80s. Like, okay, that's cool. You know, supporting like war-torn countries that are in poverty and famines and stuff. That's good. Do that. But then when they just go around on all this media tour and just start like ripping on countries and presidents and kings and rulers, it's like, who are you, man? You're a
Right.
singer, you know?
Right.
Like,
You're a singer.
why don't you focus on the crappy albums you've been making and do better on those? Okay.
No, and I think to your education point, I don't know what we're going to do as a society in 10 to 15 years, especially here, because there was a report that I read 8 years ago talking about like the plumbers then won't be around by 2025, 2030. Like some 80% of plumbers won't be around in the next 10 years.
Wow.
So what do you do then? I mean, I've got a couple good friends that are plumbers, and if I called one of them right now, they're a month out.
Yeah, it's like you won't even be able to hire your friends to come around because they're just so slammed.
They're so slammed, and we're not teaching, because the thing for the past 30, 40, 50 years even, go to college. Go acquire a bunch of debt. No, that's not going to stop. Somebody's walking past my house, apparently. Go acquire a bunch of debt to learn how to do something that as soon as you start that job, they're going to go, okay, we'll teach you how to do the job now.
Yeah.
But the longest time was if that 4 years wasn't on the resume,
oh man,
you weren't willing to stick it out and waste time and money for 4 years. At least that's my opinion. It's not for everybody. If you're going to be a teacher, or mathematician, or doctor, go to college.
There's some stuff you've got to go to college for. I mean, like, especially like medical stuff, lawyer stuff, whatever. Like, there's a ton of stuff, and even
Right.
some trades. Like, you can't just jump in and start slapping pipes together and call it good.
Right.
You've got to have, but you can have that training on the job with a good apprentice program, an internship kind of thing. But you can also go to a trade school and like knock it out in 18 months or something.
A lot
Electricians,
of them,
stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of them are, and I think what people don't understand, and I think kids nowadays, Julian being the youngest, he's 13, he's asking those questions. How much do you make? Kind of trying to gauge, what am I going to have to earn to have a certain lifestyle? And I talk to him about trades all the time because I'm like, here's the deal. Your starting electrician or trash guy or plumber that 20 years ago or 10 years ago was making 40, 45 his first year, he's going to be making 60 or 70 his first year.
Yeah.
And then I've got a guy that I know that welds. He makes well over $200,000 a year, and he welds on his own time.
Now, I was going to say that's his like business or his side hustle or whatever. I mean, that's not like
job.
working for someone.
Hope he does his own thing. And
now, does he have a shop, or is he just working around his place?
Nope, he's got a big, 40 by 40 building that he works out of. But that was all grown over time.
Oh,
right?
sure.
He learned, right? He went to trade school. He worked with a guy for years. And then on the side, he started, making the railing.
Oh, yeah.
Started making that.
Absolutely.
And then got really successful with that, built his shop, kept going. And now I see him welding that one day, welding a frame the next day, or downtown welding a bucket for somebody.
Nice. So he has like a mobile truck too. I mean, that's kind of like you got to.
You've got to, when he's built himself 2 of them over the year. And then I literally saw on Facebook the other day he bought a bucket truck.
Nice.
He's like, I found some instances where a bucket truck would be great. And so now he's going to have 3 rigs for 1 welder. But that's just how successful he is.
And he doesn't have to have any employees working with him or anything to be there. I mean, maybe like a bookkeeper, something like that. Maybe a little social media manager. I mean, that goes a long way.
Maybe,
It just depends on how involved you want to be with all that stuff. I mean, maybe you got a knack for it.
But that's the thing, is just like there's a lot of opportunity, and I think even I was taught as a kid to kind of look down on people who did those jobs. Like they were, the mechanics, the plumbers. They were kind of people that came around to help the rest of us live the life comfortably.
Right.
But the reality is they do make our lives comfortable, and they're disappearing. And that's why the cost of their services have gone through the roof.
Yeah.
And I don't see that changing. You're not replacing your plumber out with a robot anytime soon.
No.
But your cashier and the order taker at McDonald's won't exist in a decade, I don't believe.
No. And
I don't think they'll be there anymore.
And that's the thing, I mean, I remember reading a little bit about that idea, people saying like, oh, I don't like to use the self-checkout thing because it's taking somebody's job away or this or that. And first of all, I pick the line at the grocery store where there's not a bagger, because I'm actually so much better at how I want it done. I'm not saying they don't know their job. I'm saying I'm so much better at knowing what I want. And
right.
I'm going to put the refrigerator stuff like I use the paper bag still, and it's like I'm going to put the refrigerator stuff in one of those. I'm going to put the pantry stuff here. I'm going to put some other stuff here. You know, like I'm just going to do it how I want and where it makes sense. It doesn't matter. They all come into the house. They all go on the dining table and get sorted out from there. But I'm still like, I guess I'm minor OCD on stuff, you know, and so that's my OCD coming through. But
Sure.
But so like technology, it might take a person's job, but it doesn't take jobs from the economy. Like it doesn't remove the total number of jobs over time. It actually creates more jobs. Technology creates more jobs, and you might fall victim to that because it took your job. You know, like McDonald's makes a robot that assembles burgers. Okay, sorry, you know, like we just took 3 people's jobs with a robot at McDonald's. But, you know, that's also a call that like today is the day. Now is the time to start preparing for something that you didn't want to work at McDonald's your whole life anyway. You didn't want to work as a bagger or a grocery checker or whatever your whole life anyway. I'm guessing.
Right.
So like, this is the day to start preparing for where you want to be. And you were talking about Julian, your son, you know, he's asking her like, what does this job pay? What does this job pay? And those are good questions to ask. But also just like for anybody out there kind of hearing that, don't just pick a job based on how much it'll pay.
Right.
That's like terrible advice, you know?
No, it's bad. It's bad. Like I didn't grow up super wealthy by any means. I grew up, you know, kind of on the poor side of things. Then,
well, we already established you lived in a trailer for a while.
This is true.
Yeah, we knew that. We knew that.
You don't know.
I mean, my family had multiple Chevy Cavaliers. Like, if that tells you our economic status.
I think that's how we should start planning. We had a Pinto when we lived at the trailer park.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. Like they hadn't made them for like 30 years at that point.
We'll just use cars as the way to balance out how we're doing financially, because that works. That math works actually. I like it.
It does.
I drove a Saturn when I worked those 2 jobs.
Yes, you did.
And it always had a spare somewhere on it.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't afford 4 new tires at the time. No, like living that way, starting my life, you know, incredibly young, without any opportunity for these things like education and whatnot. I think that really kind of set my mind for a while and a long time to chase like money and things. And so that was always the thing. Like, how do we get more? What do we do? I took the job, you know, traveling, everything else. And so last year when I resigned from the last company, I'd been with them for almost a decade, and I made really good money there. I mean, I took over a $30,000 annual cut to take the job I have now. But I'm substantially happier because that extra money didn't really afford me anything in my life that I don't already have now, in the sense of like happiness or enjoyment, right? Like, did it add some comfort, and could we save and invest a little more?
Yeah.
Yes. But at the same time, like, if I go tomorrow, do I want to be stressed out and angry the night before I pass away because I'm worried about work?
Right.
Or do I, like the job I'm at now, it's a busy job and it can be stressful at times, but it's really not. And I work for great people and my stress levels greatly decreased, and so is my paycheck, and that's okay. Because to your point, it's not all about that. But I think in the questions he's asking and what some people need to look at, like, is what's the life I want to live, right? Is it, do I want to work 30 hours a week and be able to travel the world? Well, what do I need to earn to be able to do that? And I think that's fine and good. But to your point, chasing dollars isn't for everyone. And I think a lot of people find out when they chase that money, it doesn't give you what you thought it was going to.
Well, and you know, like you're saying, you got to find like that equilibrium of like, what do you want and what are you willing to give for that? And it's the same thing with having like a bit of a gut. You're kind of like, you know what? Would I like to be 20 to 30 pounds lighter? Yeah, I'd feel better probably. But I also happen to enjoy food quite a bit, which is why this is here, that, and I'm almost 40. So like the metabolism shifts and all that. But it's like, you got to find that happiness equilibrium. Like, I'd like to be here with the weight, but I like to be here with the food. So we got to find that balance. It's the same thing with a lot of places in life, you know?
I love pizza, and
it's so good.
I can drop 20 pounds real quick, but then I haven't had pizza in the past month and a half. Yeah. And then I gain 5 pounds to have the pizza. And that's just where I'm going to live. I've decided I'm going to live in this state where I can go about 6 weeks without pizza.
What?
And then I'm going to revert back to who I was 6 weeks prior because I need that pizza.
Now that is like when we worked at that warehouse together, we had so many pizzas. We had a $5 bill. That like, because like one of us would be like, hey, if you drive, I'll buy the $5 pizza from Little Caesars. And so it's like, okay. And then like the next day we're getting another pizza, and it's like let's say I had gotten it the other, or you had or whatever, and then you're like, hey, if you go get pizza, here's $5. And I'm like, hey, that's the same $5 bill that I gave you yesterday, And so we ended up so we just wrote pizza money on it, and we kept passing that same bill around. I wish one of us still
had it.
Well, I know who we can blame for that. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it was David. I won't say his last name, but David, if you're listening, you know it was you. You spent that money because he went to get the pizza.
Spend the money,
and he went to get it, and then and he got the $5 bill that way. But then he spent that on something else sometime.
And not to throw him in particular under the bus.
I mean, I feel like it was fair just for that one thing. He spent literally the pizza money.
Completely fair, I think, but I think that is a picture of that $5 bill was important to you and I.
It was. And
it was not important to him. Right? And so to no fault of his own, we thought that was a great, funny thing to do back and forth, and we needed that $5 bill. And he came and just, definitely rained on our parade a bit.
I mean, it just really let the air out of the balloon,
He just didn't find value in that $5 bill like we did. And I think that's true for life, right?
Yeah. But you know what? There's another thing too, and I just thought, okay, so like I'm a pastor, and one of the things that I do is talk to people before they get married, and I really need to start like trying to just like have this like, hey, you really shouldn't get married, like not because of each of you, just in general, just try to really unsell them on the whole idea, and if they're like, no, we're doing it, it's like, okay, I just wanted to make sure you knew, like really get them prepared by trying to like downplay the whole thing, but what I tell them is I'm like, okay, listen, here's why so many marriages fail. It's not because of money. It's not because of fights about money. It's not because of family. It's not because of this or that. It's because of unmet, uncommunicated expectations, right? Like I expected that you would do this, but you didn't. Like I thought I'd come home to a hot meal every night in a clean house, but apparently you're a slob who can't cook, That's in no way reflective of my life. That's just, a situation that it could be. I mean, definitely my wife doesn't cook very much. Like I'm the one that cooks in the house. I can come home from working a lot.
But then she comes home to a warm meal. So as long as
No, she's been home and is like just hanging out with our kid and they're doing whatever. And she's like, hey, I'm hungry. I'm like, yeah, there's food, in the fridge. And
she's watching this right now.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
She's planning your accidental death.
So my phone's here, and like I've been getting there. It is. As I say, I've been getting texts, and I'm just waiting for that. Yeah, just here and there. Okay. Like she texted Sister Act earlier, like as we were stumbling over that. She's like Sister Act, and probably there it is.
I got us there.
It says, "How dare you?" Like, and so she knows this though. She doesn't really like. She has a sign that's like the food groups in this house are like boxed, frozen, and canned or whatever, something like that. I'm sure I'll get a text about that too. But but like, I look at ingredients. I look at what is in the pantry, what is in the fridge, what is in the freezer, and I'm like, how can I create something out of this? So the other day we'd gone to I think it's Texas Roadhouse, and we'd each gotten a prime rib, and we're like, let's go like medium rare, and they're like, okay, so barely touched by the heat at all, like totally rare, 100% rare, like whatever, So I ate a little bit of it, but it was like just a touch undercooked for what I wanted, and it's prime rib, so like it's supposed to be pretty rare, but I'm like, whatever. So we took it home, whatever we didn't eat, we took it home because it was a pretty big portion. And the next day I'm looking at this, I'm like, what can I make out of this? Well, I had some mushrooms, had some like pasta in the pantry. I'm like, okay, I can make a little gravy with like some mushrooms and like I have some like beef, not bouillon, but the paste or the beef base, whatever. So like I make a little bit of a beef gravy sauce kind of thing, boil some noodle or like some shells, and then like chop the prime rib up and let it cook just a little bit in the mushroom gravy stuff that I did, and like just kind of put that over the pasta. I don't know if it would have passed anything at a restaurant, but it was pretty dang good. I'm looking at ingredients saying, what can I make? And so a lot of folks can't do that. So anyway, I might have, if I had had this expectation when I was getting married, like, hey, I'm going to come home to a cooked meal every night. It's like, apparently, no, I'm not. And so people do that stuff, and they have these expectations, but they don't communicate them to their spouse, to their partner, whatever. They're like, hey, this is what I'm expecting is going to happen in this scenario, this situation. Like, we're going to save this much money, or we're going to make this much money, and then you find out like one's a spender and one's not, or something like that, and you're like, oh, we didn't meet my expectations. But did you actually talk about them? Did you communicate them?
Right. I agree. I think, they say the number one reason for divorce is finances.
But it's not finances. It's not having good communication about finances.
Well, it's on the front end. You let your, desire, lust, or initial interest in that person outweigh logic.
Oh, for sure.
You said, I'm more attracted to this person than anything else than I've ever been. And so logic and 2 and 3 and 10 and 20 years down the road need not apply here, because our love will see us through. And I think what people forget with that is, like, hormones will not see you through.
Nope.
It's just not going to be the end all be all of things.
And people, like, every single one of us changes over time. Whatever our experiences are, our jobs, the people we know, the things that the trials, the hardships we go through, all those things change us and shape us. And I mean, like, we were talking earlier about, like, that guy that came and applied that had done a dime in prison, and we're like, I still remember his name. I remember what his truck looks like, and this was 8+ years ago, and I remember that.
Because you thought you were going to die.
Oh yeah, that too. And to be fair, he seemed like a pretty cool guy, but like,
he did. I would hang with him.
He gave us the story, like, well, you see what had happened was, and it's like, we know at that point, like, none of these things actually happened the way you're going to tell us.
Right.
But all those, every little interaction, every little thing changes or imprints on us in some way. And so, like, whoever you married 10, 12, 15, 20, 30 years ago is going to be different now than they were then. And you are too. And so you've got to be committed to each other, that you're going to love them in those changes. You're not just going to be looking back at how things were back then and say, oh, I loved that person. It's like, no, you've got to love them now too. And so you've got to be willing to do those changes. And I think a lot of people aren't committed to that. And so that's when things start to fall apart.
Well, to your point, there's just not enough communication about it on the front end.
Yeah.
And like, no one comes along and I feel like so rarely do people come along and tell you the truth. Right? I don't feel like that's an aspect of this life that we live in. Like, people get pregnant and people are like, oh my God, congratulations. This is going to be the greatest joy of your life.
My goodness, you're not going to sleep.
You ask me that? Somebody tells me they're having a kid. I'm like, I hope you're healthy. I hope the baby's healthy. For the next year, you're not going to have any money or any sleep or any peace. Some little tiny human is going to pee and poop on you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe in your mouth on all of those things.
1,000%. And then 3 or 4 years down the road, when they've grown up a little bit, and you think, oh, things are good. They're going to sleep in their bed all night, and you close your bedroom door and turn that lock, hoping you're going to have some private time. And then 10 minutes later, this is happening. No one tells you that. I tell you that.
Yeah.
Come across me and tell me you're having a kid. I'll tell you all the truth you want in the world. But nobody else does that.
Yeah.
I'm going to marry this person. Well, as long as you're happy and you guys love each other.
Come on.
Because that's how it works in the movies, right? Nobody comes along and tells you that. Nobody comes along and is like honest with you.
Yeah.
And I think this current generation, whatever the 20s and unders are right now, I don't even know if they're Generation X or whatever they are.
I think there's Z's now, or maybe that's my kids' I don't even remember. I should know this.
Exactly.
Like, because of my role as a pastor, I'm supposed to know these things, and I honestly forget what letter we're on at what stage, so I don't know.
Well, let's call it the 25s and unders. They have never grown up without high-speed internet.
Yeah.
They've always had it.
Yeah.
And for most of them, since middle school, high school, they've had iPhones that also got them that information right away. But what that also means is the social media and the impact from that. All they see, all they follow are people who are incredibly successful or good looking and have all these things that they want. Now that's their expectation. Ours were movies, right?
Right.
Like, we watched movies and those set our expectations. These group of kids, their expectations are just really going to be tough to obtain.
I just thought of something you should do. Like, you're the perfect guy for this. You could do, instead of like all these influencers that are now, it's TikTok now, but let's just pretend it was still YouTube.
Okay.
You know, like, you could be like the realistic expectations guy. This, like, listen, you know, here's life, and just like have these videos that you drop every day, like, you know, hey, I'm walking out to my truck and, oh, the battery's dead and the coolant leaked out of it, you know, because the radiator's shot, and I gotta figure out how to patch that up so that I can get to my job, you know, just whatever, just like setting all these expectations. I feel like you could pull that off. And just and like give little moral lessons to kids along the way, and be like, listen, I'm here, like, I'm your guy that's going to help you figure this stuff out.
No, I like that. I had to go to Kroger today to pick a few things up, and I almost took a picture and sent it to a bunch of people because I was walking through the beer aisle to get to the back of Kroger, and there is a 2-gallon jug of milk, like right where some Busch Light was supposed to be. And so
choice was made today.
A choice was made. You know, some guy was walking through like on a budget, and it's like, I need this milk to make food, to have breakfast, and then was like,
he's like, wait a minute.
I do have $7 more I could spend.
He's like, I could do
and have
beer
that Busch
chili.
Light.
I could do beer in my cereal in the morning.
And it cracks me up because, like,
he made his choice.
I definitely lived a life, right, where for many years I had to count my dollars.
Yeah.
And I never made the choice, like, where it's going to be like, all right, well, I'm going to have a beer tonight over dinner. But I definitely had been in the grocery store before being like, I really want this.
Yeah.
But I really, like, we need this to make meals. So I understood it. But it just cracked me up because I was like, it had been a minute since I've been there, you know? And I was dying, man.
That's hilarious.
That 2-gallon of milk in there was
but at
what
least
I
they
needed to
set
see.
it like in a refrigerated area, because like I'll see people that put, like, I've seen ground beef sitting out like in the dry, you know, like in the warm.
They're just
aisle.
ruining,
I'm like, are you
ruining
good
stuff.
Like, what kind of a, you know? Oh my goodness. So, man, talking about those choices, I remember when I had first moved down to Tennessee. For 3 months I worked at a car dealership, and it was stupid. I hated it so much. I mean, I enjoyed it, but like, I hated how they ran it. I was good at it, but the only thing that my job was to meet people and show them whatever car, and like take them on test rides, like copy their photo ID, grab a drive out license plate that had a magnet on it, slap it on whatever car they wanted to drive. And if they wanted to drive 8 cars, then I would drive them for 8 cars until they found the one they wanted. And then I would bring them to the sales manager and be like, hey, they want to buy a car. And then they would start talking. And the sales manager apparently sucked at his job, and even though he'd had it for 30 years, and he couldn't close a deal with him because he wouldn't negotiate. And they'd be like, we don't like that guy. We liked you, Nick. You were cool, but we can't deal with them. So we're going to go up to Rivergate and buy a Dodge up there. It's like, dang it, you know. I lost out on $100 from selling that car. Like, they paid me $8.50 an hour and $100 per car. And so, yeah, it was like, you had
what a commission structure.
Oh, it was bad. And so, but so anyway, so after that, I worked on the grounds crew at Tribeca University there in town, and I loved that so much more. And so, but my paycheck at first was like very tight. I would go, I just bought a house, and that was like that was before the housing boom crash in 2008. They loaned me money when I was at that car lot on $8.50 an hour on a job that I had never done before. And they're like, yeah, we'll take a gamble on you.
This.
You're 21, you know, making $8.50 an hour. We'll loan you $69,500 for a house. And I made all my payments and didn't ever, you know, not make my payments. But that was a bad call on their part. Oh, and I also had no credit score because I'd never borrowed money before. Like,
well, this is why that particular crash happened.
This is why that happened, because they did that with other people who did not make their payments. But anyway, so I'd get my paycheck. It's every 2 weeks. I'd pay all my stuff. I'd fill up my gas tank because I'm like, I got to get to work. Like, it's responsibility, right? Like, fill up the gas tank, and then I would go to the Aldi in Madison and buy my groceries. And I had, I think, $21 a couple weeks in a row is what I had left after paying my bills and filling up my fuel tank. And so I'm like, what am I going to get? I'm going to get the little party pizzas that are 89 cents, like the Totino's, but it was the Aldi brand. And I got 10 of them. And so there's $8.90 plus tax. And I could bake 5 at a time in my oven right on the rack. And I would put them on a paper plate in a gallon Ziploc bag and take one a day to work. And I had a bag of chips in there and like a 12-pack of Aldi sodas, you know, Aldi Cokes. or pop. And so anyway,
Cokes.
yeah, it's Cokes. And so that was my meal, like potato chips, a party pizza, and a Coke. Yeah, that's making choices. I wanted to pay my water, and my electric.
Right, well, that was it. No, I mean, I definitely remember the days like, well, if we pay the water bill a week late, it's going to be okay, because then we can pay the electric bill that's a month late before they cut it off.
Right.
I lived that life. We lived that.
Yeah.
Life. It was, you had to make the decisions. Today, a guy decided Bush Light over milk.
Bush Light over milk, and it's like,
I really regret not taking a picture.
Oh man, that's good. That's pretty fun. I mean, you could recreate it, but at this point, like, we're gonna know.
It's not. It wouldn't be the same. I would.
You
know.
would know.
I would know.
You would know.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah. Like we said earlier, like, even if nobody enjoys this, we are having a great time.
I'm having a good time. No, I was sitting thinking we probably should do just who is it? Is it Bush or it's Bert Kreischer?
Bert Kreischer, yeah.
There it is. And then who's his buddy? The guy that's been doing this a lot.
Tom Segura? Or
Tom Segura.
Yeah.
No,
Oh my
it's
goodness.
one, I was laughing drinking this. I mean, I'm drinking water or was.
I've got some nice tea in my hot pitcher here.
Well, it made me think about that clip that's just, blown up with them, where Bert's pulls out the big boy, and he's like, Tom's like, what's that? He's like, Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
And he's like, wait a minute, what is it really? Right? And then he goes to pour some Kool-Aid. I loved that.
Like
and
it was
I liked
actual Kool-Aid?
Oh, have you not seen this?
No, I haven't seen this one.
Oh no! So yeah, he's like, Tom's like, people are walking around seeing you with this giant Yeti, thinking, man, that guy drinks a lot of water. But really, you're waking up at 6 a.m. a grown man and drinking a gallon of Kool-Aid.
I heard him on, I think it was on a podcast or something, and he was talking about, like with some other comedians or something, about like how much alcohol Bert Kreischer, how much he consumes. And he was talking about, like, on tour, he only drinks wine, and he talked about like how, like, 2 to 3 bottles a night on tour that he was drinking, like, after his shows. And they're like, dude, are you serious? Like, you're drinking that much? He's like, yeah, that's not that much, right? And they're like, that is so much.
No, that's a lot.
Like, that's so much wine to drink by yourself. And so it's just like, wow, But he is pretty funny. I like the one on one of his comedy specials where he talked about like coming home like at like 5:30 in the morning or whatever, and then having to take his girls to school, and it's like parent teacher conference day. So he real quick grabbed a couple Diet Cokes and put them in his jacket, and he's like sitting there in a conference. He pops it open, and it's like, that's not Coke, it's Coors Light. And so he's like, you got a game time decision there, son. What are you gonna do? He's like, I chugged a Coors Light, opened the second one. Like, oh my
I haven't
goodness.
seen that.
Yeah, it's one of his specials.
I like those guys a lot.
Yeah, they're funny.
No, that's kind of what, for the most part, obviously they're way cooler to listen to than we are.
I mean, maybe,
I mean, it's true, right?
They are professional comedians, so
if we had some notoriety, people would be interested in our lives too.
Yeah.
But that's what this conversation's made me think of. Like, I came in planning to be more structured than this.
No, I feel like
and
we
then it
were
just didn't
the
happen.
right amount of structured. I mean, like, I had a couple things that I was like wanting us to kind of meander through and talk about, but like none of it is hard and fast. I mean,
right.
I try to have like some kind of a point or some kind of an idea, and I mean, like, as I talk with different people, my thoughts are, how is it, what is it that somebody that's listening to this or watching this, what is it that they can kind of take away from this, let's call it an experience. I feel like it's an experience being able to partake in watching us. You guys are welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
But, what do they take away from this moment, from this experience? I mean, like, as I look at you, I mean, I've known you for so long, and so it's like, I kind of had to stop and look back at our friendship and our time that I've known you, and it's like, okay, as I look at your life, I mean, whether it was, so, not to rip on trailer parks, we're really not meaning that.
We're not.
But
we're
just
not.
being
We're not at
being
all.
serious, like, there's hardships involved in that. Like, it's not an easy
Right.
life. There's gonna, in all of these, there's gonna be people there that are like trying to steer you off track, whether it's people that are, dealing in certain things, whether it's people that are just living on the wrong side of the law, and they're gonna be they're going to be trying to sway. I mean, not necessarily gangs and stuff like that, but there's always that chance that you could just go off the rails,
Right.
There's bad influences. That can be any neighborhood, but trailer parks do have that. And so, to go from that kind of situation, and I mean, that wasn't your whole life. You guys lived in a few different places. You guys actually lived in Costa Rica for a while, so that's kind of interesting.
Did. Yep.
So you've had a few experiences and some good stuff, for sure. But like going from that, like you say, you didn't have your GED, but you jumped into some jobs that ended up being quite a career. And, would college have helped? Maybe, I don't know. Probably not, and so the biggest thing is, and having known you, having worked for you, I mean, you were my boss for, about 13, 14 months there. It's like, hey, here's how to do the job. Like you were kind of pulling yourself up, like, yeah, somebody might have brought you in, offered you the job, but you didn't slack off and say, okay, I've got it. I'm just going to be kind of coast on autopilot. You're like, I'm going to do a good job at it. And that got noticed, up the corporate ladder. They moved you into middle management. That made you, I mean, you talked like you moved from the one company to the one you're at now, but you've had quite a few job offers that you didn't take for one reason or another, but you've made yourself marketable. And so whether that's, somebody that might, whether they want to go into a trade like, the plumbing, the electrician, welding, air conditioning, whatever, whether it's something like that or whether it's some other type of like more white collar job that you want, make yourself marketable and then work hard until you get noticed. Don't sit there and wallow in it and say, hey, why didn't anybody promote me or why didn't anybody give me this or that? Like, take charge of your own path, right?
No, I agree with that 100%. I think, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere if I just showed up and clocked in at 9 and left at 5. I would still be right where I was 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people who are successful end up where they end up is because they put in the time, they put in the work, they educate themselves. To touch back on what you talked about with your phone, you can become as educated as you want to be today. You just might not have a piece of paper that backs it up. But if you're educated in what you know, no one comes asking for your references.
Yeah.
If you can talk educantly,
you can be educated.
Educantly. That's it, boys and girls.
Hey, George Bush was president, man, and he talked like that, so you got this.
Right. If you can talk well about your field, and if you are educated and you sound educated, nobody comes asking for that piece of paper, right? If you learn what you need to learn and can do the job, nobody's going to ask for that. And I think more and more people are seeing that. Big companies are not requiring educations anymore, right? They're not looking for 4-year degrees. They're looking for people with aptitude.
Yeah.
Can I teach you? Can you learn? Can you be coached? And if you were those things and you're willing to work hard, and that doesn't mean work 80 hours a week to impress your boss.
For sure.
But it does mean probably going a step further than the guy in the cube next to you or the guy at the warehouse down the road. You do have to put in a little extra sometimes. You can end up in decent places in life, and you don't have to be boxed into a 9 to 5 for your entire life.
And if you do all that and nobody takes notice or nobody picks you up or takes you to a higher level, then you might have learned something along the way there that'll be useful. Like you can go maybe start your own business, your own thing, whatever. I've got a friend that's he's been working for one company. Things weren't going where he wanted to. He does like social media managing, SEO stuff on websites, but he also does a lot of film. He makes commercials. He makes like political ads. He says, I love doing attack ads for candidates, like making their commercials. He says it's just fun.
Oh, okay.
Like he doesn't make the attack, but he does it for them. Like he produces and records the commercials and everything.
Right.
And so, he does that stuff. So he recently just kind of stepped out on his own. And he's been kind of doing a little side hustle with it here and there while he finished a project for the company he worked for. But I think, Friday this week is his last day, and then he'll be kind of off on his own. And so it's like his career track wasn't going where he wanted with that, but he stuck it out as long as he needed to. And then he's not taking any of their clients, and they got a lot of big ones. So it's not like he's able to snake them anyway, but he's not trying to do that. He's building his own business as he goes. And so it might be tough for maybe a year, maybe 2, maybe just a few months, but he does good work and he knows what he's doing because he's applied himself to that job and he's made himself stand out, and it's going to work out well for him. It really is. So find that thing that you enjoy and get after it.
Yeah, I think that's it. If there's enjoyment in what you do, you'll do it well.
Yeah. So, there's you're talking about, just some of the stuff you're saying about if you present yourself well with knowledge. And I was just thinking, like, man, I remember one time when I was on the forklift in the warehouse and I thought I was doing okay, and you know where this is going. And like I had knocked over this stack of insulation. It happened a lot, and I'm just trying to restack it like a little bit at a time with the forklift, and I'm thinking I'm finally getting the hang of this, because this is not material that's on pallets. Like, it's all loose material that can tip and stuff. And so it's like harder than your average forklift in the warehouse type position. And you came out of the office and you're like, are you still working on that? Man, you suck. And I'm like, that hurt, that hurt me, because I thought I was doing okay. And then you jumped on the machine and you're like, we got to knock this out. We got to go. And you just like, boom, 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 put it in its place, and we were done. I'm like, that told me where the bar was. Like, that set the bar. But so I thought that was a valid management tool. Like, man, you suck. Was just like, it was actually
negative reinforcement.
It was negative, positive reinforcement, or positive, negative reinforcement. I don't know, but it did that. Like, it was a negative comment that reinforced me to do better. And I feel like that was appropriate. But, some people can't handle that. And I think, we got to grow a thicker skin when it comes to some of that stuff. We're so scared to tiptoe around things. And it's like, listen, if you really want, like, I give you permission in my life. If you see me screwing something up actively and I can do better, like, please tell me. I mean, my dad and I poured this concrete slab out behind our house. I was telling you about it earlier, I think, before we were recording.
You did a terrible job, yeah.
And we just, we've done it before, but it was too much for two of us. And by the time we got done, like, pouring it and screeding it off with the board, like, the other end was starting to set up too much where it didn't want to trowel out and float out very well, real smooth. And so, to borrow a phrase from a friend of mine back in the day that did concrete, he said, it looks like hammered dog crap. And that's what this looks like in a way. It's just like, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, if you took dog crap and just hit it with a hammer, it's all like, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. It's not quite that bad, but it's not a great job. And so I'm looking at that. But as we were doing it, like, the guy with the concrete truck, the guy driving it, he's like lending us a hand, like, kind of with the rake, kind of pulling some away from the board when it was getting too thick. And I was like, hey, man, he told us he worked 21 years in concrete finishing before he started driving the truck. And I'm like, hey, if you've got any words for us that are like, we're not proud, like, we will take your advice.
Right. Teach us.
Yeah, like, teach me, man, like, help me out. And I feel like he had a lot he could have said and just didn't. Right. And I understand that because, like, he also has to leave at some point. Like, he doesn't have all night to school us. But be teachable, like, allow yourself to be taught by people that know more than you and that have been down that road before.
Yeah, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
It's absolutely invaluable.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think if there was anything else. Like, I mean, we can leave some stuff on the table to talk another time. I always have these episodes thinking, like, I would love to continue this conversation another time, and I think there's more to be said. But do you have anything else that you would like to, drop on these fine viewers and listeners of this podcast?
No, your comment then just made me laugh. I think I told you this recently. I've watched Joe Dirt a lot recently.
Joe Dirt.
I've watched it like 3 times in the past month, maybe more.
It feels a bit excessive, but I get it.
It's become my airplane movie.
Okay.
Like, pretty much anytime I hop on an airplane, if I feel like watching a movie, I'm just going to watch Joe Dirt.
So, like, the person in the seat next to you is like, what's this guy shaking with laughter about? You're like, oh, this movie from 18 years ago.
My favorite was the first time I rewatched it, like, month and a half ago, whenever it was. I flip it open, and the flight attendant, like one of the Southwest flight attendants, he's like, is that on Southwest? And I was like, no, man, I've got it on my computer. And he was like, oh. And I was like, do you have a laptop? Bring it here. I'll throw it on there for you. And so I threw Joe Dirt on this guy's laptop for him.
Oh, my goodness.
But no, it's making me think about the Xander show. That's the guy interviewing him the whole time. And
Dennis Miller in real life, yeah.
Right. And I can't fully relate with Joe Dirt, but I can in a lot of ways. And so I was just like, no, we could totally get together another day, maybe have a point more so than we did today, but still keep it pretty loose, and we can walk through, because I think there's parts of your life that it would be interesting to kind of work through and let your audience hear.
Listen, I would gladly, like, let you like swap seats with me metaphorically. I mean, I don't think you could do that. We're a very long distance apart right now in miles, but I think you could take like the lead chair in this, try your hand at it, and be like, hey, let me ask you about you. That would be
Sure.
good.
No, I think we could just have the conversation. I think it'd be pretty natural between the two of us.
Yeah.
So no, I don't have anything in particular to say. Again, it was just fun to sit on here and talk and have a good time.
And that's what I like about this kind of format. I mean, two of my favorite podcasters. I mean, Joe Rogan's out there, and I know a lot of people hate on him for whatever reason. And it's like, listen, I don't agree with 100% of his stuff. I mean, like, he wanted Bernie Sanders to be president. Like, I heard him say that out of his own lips. I'm like, I don't agree with that. Personally, that's not me. But hey, if that's how he wants to be, that's fine.
Yeah.
I still listen to his next podcast, and that's something that's missing in our world, right? Like,
it is.
I mean, there's actually people out there that voted for Joe Biden. There's people that voted for Joe Biden, and not because they thought he would do a good job, because clearly, like, he's lived up to that expectation, and yet, like, they're like, hey, this is our man, and it's like, how can you even have a conversation about politics when they're like, we don't like this person one bit, but we're never Trump kind of people, and I just don't. Whatever, that's fine. But
to that, I can equally say there are people out there that voted for Donald Trump.
Exactly, 100%.
And years before that, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
and it's like
any politician most likely that's been voted for the past 50, 60 years, I probably don't like them.
Right, and so at the same time, though, we've got to be able to actually sit down and have a conversation with these folks, and like, we wouldn't have talked about the president thing if I hadn't just brought it up just now, just to make a point that there's people that are going to have this opinion that seems absurd to you about a political leader, and why would we let that divide us, as people? And so, Joe Rogan, I mean, that, but I love the way he has these interactions with people, and I don't check out every episode that he does. Some of them don't interest me, and I have this feeling that not every guest that I have on here is going to interest, my audience. But one of the other guys, I actually got to know who he was from him being a guest on Joe Rogan's show, and it was his name is Lex Friedman. It's Fridman, and he's on everything. But I like to use Spotify because a lot of these guys have their podcast video on there. But actually, Apple Podcasts, Apple has started allowing like their videos. So I hadn't been posting mine to my server that I use is called Podbean. I hadn't been posting the videos on there because I didn't realize that, and so now I'm going to start doing that again. But because I like the video format, and even if you only are listening to the audio, I think the fact that you and I see each other while we're having this conversation, I think it helps the conversation flow better. I was a guest on a guy's show that I've never met before. He's a friend of a friend, and he does a podcast, and so I literally was talking to him on my phone through my headphones, and so I'm not seeing him. Like, I don't have those visual cues of like if he's gearing up to say something, I don't know. And so I actually listened to it because it just posted today, and I was listening to it, and I was like, oh, I kind of hate myself right now because I felt like I talked over him quite a bit. I mean, I was the guest, but still, like, he was trying to say a couple things here and there, and I didn't really hear it at the time that he was
right.
So that would have been different.
Well, because your point, you didn't have the visual cues. Yeah. And I don't know what the math is, but I know more of our communication is done physically than verbally. And so I agree. I think the video format's the way to do it. And I mean, we're in the future. We can do this.
We can do it.
You're down there in Florida. I'm up here north of Nashville, and you can see me and what I'm doing. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That one guy, Lex Friedman, though, he's really interesting. He's like an MIT guy, and he has all these guests on that are just super smart. Like, I don't understand half of it, but I just love the way he does it. And he like just wears a symbol. He's like, everything's black and white, like a black suit, white shirt, black tie. He's got like a black drape behind him. And like, honestly, the lighting is pretty terrible in his studio. They got like those Shure mics that everybody uses on their podcast. They're like $400 and something. And I'm rocking this little $89 tabletop from JLab, and
that's it.
It's working. Like, I actually have a mic on a boom, and it's just, I don't find it necessary for what I'm doing. Like, maybe someday I'll be there.
No, I mean, I don't know how things sound on your end, but you sound fine. It sounds like there's...
No, absolutely. It sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a microphone right here, and somebody has balanced it out. I mean, it sounds fine.
Yeah. But I like this guy's show. Like, this dude, he's Lex Friedman. He's just, he despite whatever his training, like he's into AI and robotics and stuff like that, I think is what his field is. But his goal is just to help promote like peace, love, harmony kind of stuff. Like some of his words are like that. He's a sweet guy is what I say. Like he's not like soft, I mean, but he's just a real nice guy. And I'm like, man, that goes so much farther than getting all up in arms about something. And so if I'm modeling after anybody, it's a little bit after those two guys, but it's not so much trying to be them, but just say like, how can I have a conversation with somebody? And even if it's somebody I don't agree with, look at my thing. Like I'll talk about anything. And that's why I named it that. Cause I want to have those conversations and give people a chance to share about them. And I realize I've been talking for like 3 minutes myself. So I'm like, you know, I'm trying to limit that too. Like I'm learning as I go, like, hey, shut up and let the guest talk.
No, I mean, it's all about, I think especially if we ever talk on here again, I think this is more the format for me. I want it to be just an open conversation. Like you said, 100 people might see this and none of them might like it, or 10,000 might see it and go, dude, I want to hang out with these guys because they're awesome. Because we are.
Oh, and we'll do that. Like if you want to hang out, drop us a note at, I forgot the name of my email address, so don't worry about it. But it's in the show notes.
It'll be in the link.
Yeah. First of all, I do two different podcasts, so I had to stop and think which one I'm on. So it's Talk with Nick About Anything at gmail.com. That's what it is.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it'll definitely be in the show notes in case I mess that up. Like, don't quote me on that. Look at the show description, and there'll be links in there, including anything if you have something that you want me to link.
No, nothing at this point. I haven't started my OnlyFeet page yet. But as the market continues to decline, we might have to get into that. But no, man, have you not heard of that? It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. Like OnlyFans, but it's only feet. Like you pay to see feet. Oh my goodness. Hey, you know what? It's a victimless crime, you know, unless somebody else is intimately familiar with your feet, nobody's going to know.
Right. Nobody's going to know. But no, I appreciate you having me on, and it was a good conversation. I'm glad to be able to just talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe next time we'll talk a little bit about like cars and stuff like that. By the way, you didn't buy that little Nissan, what was it, Nissan?
No. It was a Toyota
Tercel. You didn't end up getting that, did you?
No. This guy finally gets back to me saying, "Yeah, I've got the title now. It's good to go. Can you come get it today?" And I was like, "Well, I can't get it this second, but I can be there tomorrow." I said, "Just the engine cranks, right?" I was like, "It turns." And he's like, "Yep, it just needs a battery." Well, the next morning I get a message from him, and he says, "Well, $350 if you can get it today." And I was like, "What changed?" "Well, I put a battery on it and the motor's locked."
Oh no!
And I was like, "Well, then I'm out, dude."
Yeah.
Like, 300? Will you take it for 300? I was like, "No, because I don't know what's wrong."
Yeah.
At that point, if the motor would turn, I totally
would work on it. Yeah.
But I don't want to have to buy something that I'm not going to be able to get running.
Yeah. So
sadly,
like,
no Tercel.
To like share the inside story. If you guys have ever seen Breaking Bad, like Jesse Pinkman's car, like the little station wagon that he had, little red car that he had, it was basically that, but a different color with a broken out grill, or like it was just kind of hanging in there. But it was a 4-wheel drive with like a 4-cylinder and a 5-speed, and this car would have been perfect for so many fun things.
So many fun things.
Man, I was so hoping he'd be able to get that car and enjoy it so much.
Ashley's happy that it fell through.
Ashley doesn't really know.
She has no idea what she's missing out.
None.
Because if I got it and had gotten it running, she'd be like, "This is cool."
You might have been able to have a tug of war contest with her Jeep, and if the Jeep was in 2-wheel drive, for sure you'd win. Maybe even 4-wheel drive. I don't know, because like the Jeep with the clutch, unless you're really good, I don't know, man.
I don't know. I had faith in that Tercel.
That Tercel was going to be awesome if it actually ran, but oh well.
You can't win them all, man.
You can't. So, well, anyway, man. Hey, buddy. Thanks for being on here. I'm gonna end our recording and sign off now. And until next time,
fair.
We'll catch you later.
All right. See you, buddy.